The commissioner of the Texas Education Agency was in the Brazos Valley today. How the agency is approaching this school year as COVID cases continue to rise. And with those cases rising in the Brazos Valley, how one jail is being impacted. Your KRHD News starts right now.
Connecting the Brazos Valley. This is KRHD News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us at 5. I'm Naya Gonzalez. School is right around the bend, and for the TEA, the goal is for all Texas children to enter school with the foundational knowledge and skills to be curious, confident, and successful learners. One of the agency's leaders was in College Station this morning. KRHD News reporter Hannah King explains why.
TEA Commissioner Mike Morath made a stop in College Station this morning. He said he's interested in the learning practices that they have here and wants to see how to replicate them across the state.
I have the good fortune of having a job where every day I get to wake up and think about how to help 5.5 million souls.
Making sure communities have the best resources possible for its children. The Commissioner of Education, Mike Morath, commended the Charlotte Sharp Children's Center Monday.
So I'm honored to be here and see it. We wanted to see what A&M had created here because you bring together one of the best schools of education in the state of Texas with extraordinarily skilled leaders in early childhood.
Witnessing the state-of-the-art facilities, instruction, and collaboration between the Texas A&M University system and the Children's Center, Commissioner Morath was pleased at what he saw.
One of the things that you see here that is extremely rare in most pre-K settings is the focus on teacher development, teacher training. So you can actually walk, and there's physical partitions set up so that you can go behind kind of double paned glass. Listen to what's happening in the classroom, discuss with your colleagues what's happening in the classroom, see practice that's happening in real time.
And I think what's happening here is exactly what is in your vision.
Texas A&M Chancellor John Sharp also pleased to see the center, named after his late wife Charlotte, doing exactly what Commissioner Morath is talking about.
I think she would be very pleased with what this center is doing. What's happening with these children here is really amazing. As I go through and see these little 4-year-olds reading and things like that, this is an amazing place.
The first day of school is nearing, and another topic being highly discussed is masking up or not. Commissioner Morath says that decision is something up to families themselves.
The school environment is extremely safe in schools all over the state of Texas. I think some parents are wrestling with, do I make my child wear a mask or don't I? I think that's a decision each family needs to make and what they think is in the best interest of their own kids.
He also says that wearing masks could hinder educational experience.
When you think about children this young, being able to see people vocalize it tends to be pretty important as part of the educational experience.
With recently released TEA guidance, there has been some confusion about what information will be shared from the school to parents. But Commissioner Morath states schools will follow the same protocols they did last year.
There's been some, I think, misinterpretation I've seen fairly common about notice requirements, but all students in the state of Texas, if they begin to exhibit symptoms of any communicable disease, COVID included, parents are immediately informed. Similarly, if a student is in a classroom setting, sort of a close contact with another student, those parents are also informed.
In College Station, Hannah King, KRHD News.
And the Charlotte Sharp Children's Center says they're working to give high-quality experience in child care. The center is a state-licensed preschool and provides both half-day and full-day learning experiences for children ages 2 to 6. The CSCC says students will serve as both leaders and helpers while, quote, making choices and engaging in discussions about thematic unit of study. To learn more, visit csccprek.com. The TEA says if a person who has been inside the school tests positive for COVID-19, they must notify local health departments. If any staff or students test positive, the school must inform the Texas Department of State Health Services. Schools cannot require masks, and if a student tests positive, they're not allowed to attend in-person classes. If a student is considered close contact, they can attend school only after 10 days of no symptoms. If the student is vaccinated, they are not considered close contacts. And don't forget to connect with KRHD Online for the latest on what's happening across the Brazos Valley. Take out your phones, open your camera app, and scan that QR code right there on your screen. You'll see a notification banner at the top of your phone screen. Tap that banner, and then you will have access to a link with our website and all of our social media accounts. The second special session for the Texas legislature starts today. While the Senate met quorum, the House did not, leaving the future of the session up in the air. The House closed its doors early after failing to meet the 100-person requirement. The Senate proposed a resolution that would speed up the process of passing legislation. Meanwhile, a judge in Travis County is blocking the arrest of the House Democrats who left the state to break quorum. This will allow the House Dems to remain outside the state to return home without the threat of apprehension. The temporary restraining order was granted late last night. It will expire in 14 days unless it's extended. There will be 17 items on the agenda, including federal COVID relief spending, legislation for public K through 12 education, modifying the filing periods and election dates, reforming laws about radioactive waste, and lastly, legislation on employment. New at 5 construction on the City of Bryan's downtown Quiet Zone project is set to start this week. That project calls for the elimination of train horns at 24 grade crossings in the downtown area. The first phase of construction at the Union Pacific crossings is estimated to take 6 to 8 months. Improvements include enhancements to things like medians, island sides, sidewalks, and signage. 2 men who escaped the Leon County Jail last week are still on the run. Around 4 p.m. Friday, DPS attempted to stop a truck stolen from a gas station in Conroe. Police say the driver was Kevin Krhd, one of the men who escaped. Officers later found that truck abandoned off Highway 79 near Palestine. The owner of the truck reported a .45 caliber pistol was in the truck, leading officials to believe Krhd is armed and dangerous. So far, there's no word on where the other escaped inmate, Kevin Caller, might be. Anyone with information is asked to contact Leon County Sheriff's Office. While in Grimes County, the Sheriff's Office has had to make a tough decision regarding jail visitation during the ongoing pandemic. KRHD News reporter Rebecca Fiedler takes us to Anderson for more.
Grimes County Sheriff Don Sowell recently closed jail visitation as a precautionary measure since 2 of his staff tested positive for COVID-19. The jail had reopened to visitors for just 1 month starting in early July after being closed off during most of the pandemic. Sowell's decision to close visitation at the beginning of August came after 2 of his staff, including the county jail administrator, went home sick with the coronavirus.
We opened up in the recent past with small baby steps, visitation with caution. So rather than take a chance, we decided to go ahead and hold it off. We're going to reserve everything until September 1.
Sowell says reception from the public about closing visitation has been mostly positive and understanding. So far, the Sheriff's Office has been able to keep COVID-19 out of the inmate population throughout the entire pandemic. Sowell is determined to maintain that track record. Inmates continue to undergo COVID screening and quarantine before being admitted into general population. The sheriff said he will revisit the situation at the end of this month and determine whether visitation can be reinstated. Reporting in Anderson, Rebecca Fiedler, KRHD News.
As teacher shortages continue to be a concern, the Education Department is hoping an overhaul of a grant program for future teachers will attract more of them to the profession. It recently added more flexibility to the Teach Grant program. Students can get up to $4,000 a year if they plan to teach high-demand subjects in an underserved school. Students in the past have had issues with their grants becoming loans. Now the Education Department says that will only happen if a student runs out of time to complete 4 years of teaching within the 8-year deadline, or if the student requests it.
We also know from the research that when you have some financial benefit through scholarships or grants, that it is going to directly affect the number of teachers of color that are going to benefit from that as well.
Margarita Bianco is working to get more teachers of color in schools nationwide through what's known as a Grow Your Own program. Pathways to Teaching works to help high school students see the potential for them to be teachers in their community.
Helping young people understand, one, the value that they bring because of their racial or ethnic makeup, their multilingual status, all of these things are super important. Also to help them understand the systems that disenfranchise them and how can they come back to make a change.
The pandemic has highlighted disparities in the education system, and she says that she's had a lot of districts contacting her recently about starting their own programs. The latest federal data shows around 80% of public school teachers are white women, and that is much different than the student population.
My own research with students, they talk about the need for that level of connection that they have with teachers of color that they might not otherwise have and especially young men of color, talking about their real need to have other men of color in those leadership spaces. It's incredibly important for student success.
Pathways to Teaching currently has partnerships in the areas that you see on this map, and Bianco says that Grow Your Own programs have seen success with recruiting teachers. But one of the bigger challenges is retaining them in school districts. Now, many people are continuing to skip routine physicals during the pandemic, and ahead in our lineup, we'll talk about what one family discovered about their son during an appointment that could be a lesson for all of us. Many athletes have had their sports canceled during the pandemic, and that meant that they didn't need to get a sports physical, something that can catch issues early. Dan Grossman introduces us to a student athlete who could have died if it wasn't for a routine physical, and the lessons doctors say that we can all learn from it.
As soon as, they pull us up to the blocks and they say on your marks, it just kind of goes blank. I don't feel anything and I just go.
In high school track, hurdles measure exactly 39 inches high, spaced precisely 30 feet apart.
Some part of it is grace, like trying to be, fluid and everything like that.
They are obstacles Mateo Casados has spent a high school career perfecting.
Okay, so this is the prelims for the 110 high hurdles.
But of the hundreds, thousands he has effortlessly leapt with flawless grace, none have rivaled the one hurdle Mateo faced that was neither bound by height nor space.
And so I was lifting in the basement with my dad, and we had noticed it, I got through 50 sit-ups and 15 push-ups, whatever, and I was just dying. I felt I was gonna throw up, pass out, my arms were numb.
In high school sports, it's commonplace for teams to conduct routine physicals before the season to make sure everyone is up to operating speed. During the pandemic, that slowed immensely. A study by the American Diabetes Association found by as much as 43%. But a chance physical with a chance doctor last summer showed Mateo's heart was working slower than most.
Yeah, it was terrifying to not know what that meant for the future or even just for your child's life.
It was the first time Mom and Dad had heard the words anomalous coronary artery, a congenital heart defect that meant oxygen and nutrients weren't getting to Mateo's heart the same way they do most. In high school athletes, the condition can mean sudden and unpredictable death.
You never know what's going to happen going into surgery. There's a lot of risks, but fixing it was our concern. And, whether he ran again or not, we didn't know. It was a risk that we all had to take.
Doctors gave the family two options: limit Mateo's activity, which meant no track, no hiking, no strenuous activity of any kind, or open heart surgery.
I just wanted to get out of the way and get back to what I wanted to do. I guess that was kind of my attitude going into it.
How you been doing?
Good.
Good.
For a young adult who aspired to get a scholarship, win nationals, and compete at the highest level of his craft, the decision, no matter how risky, was obvious.
Ever since I was little, I loved playing soccer and doing those things, and giving it up would have been unimaginable. I didn't really want to live a life where I wasn't able to be active or go work out or, go on a hike.
Laps around a track turned into laps up and down a hallway. But bit by bit and day by day, Mateo started to simultaneously overcome the smallest yet largest hurdles of his life. By month 1, he could walk his first mile. By month 2, he could pick up weights more than 5 pounds. By February, 7 months after his open heart surgery, Mateo was ready to compete in his first race back at state. A race his dad was able to capture on video, where Mateo logged a personal record in the 60-meter hurdles, Mateo! Finishing second.
To see him finish his first race and to see his face, it was good. It was a highlight.
He just did this, yes, and then after he said, he turned to me and he said, "I'm so strong, Mom." And I said, "I know."
Let's see, so this was from this year. This was the shootout. I took second in that race, or in that meet.
Now, Mateo is 2 weeks away from leaving for South Dakota School of Mines on a track scholarship, healthier than ever, all because of a routine physical.
So lucky that we saw that different doctor that we'd never seen before for a physical in the middle of COVID.
One that allowed this 18-year-old to prove he had more heart, a stronger heart, than a diagnosis that tried to prove otherwise.
He's living proof that if you put your mind to something, there are no limits on what you can do.
I'm Dan Grossman.
And finally in our lineup, a deadline is looming that could make the worker shortage even worse. We're looking into what's behind the big backlog in employment-based green cards.
And now let's get our first check on our weather.
Thank you, Naya. Well, for the Brazos Valley, a heat advisory is in effect until 7 p.m. Now, there isn't one in effect for tomorrow. That's just for Central Texas. But for the next couple of hours, just know that heat advisory will still be in place, as the heat index could be above 105 in some places. We're not expecting much of any rain for the time being. Tomorrow, there might be a very isolated shower in the area, but those chances are pretty much less than 20%, so I'm not even going to be putting it on that 10-day forecast. But we could be getting a little bit of relief come the weekend, and maybe that's a little bit long to wait, but we'll just have to wait till then to get some rain. Tonight, 77 degrees for Bryan College Station, 74 in Caldwell, and 75 in Hearn. As for tomorrow's high temperatures, again, there's no heat advisory for this, but it's still going to be plenty hot. 95 in Anderson, 96 in Madisonville, 95 in Cameron, and Bryan College Station should have a high temperature of 96 degrees. And of course, you can tack on some humidity to that. So going into tonight, things will be relatively clear and breezy. Also windy tomorrow. Now, there could be one very spotty shower attempting to show up somewhere in the Brazos Valley tomorrow. I don't think there's going to be very much at all. It's almost not really worth putting on that forecast in terms of an actual rain chance. Wednesday, it really should be dry. We'll be dealing with partly cloudy conditions and still hot, and definitely still on the humid side. So here is that 10-day forecast. 96 on Wednesday, and then we're looking at morning lows around 97 to 96. And we have highs of 96 to 95 pretty much all across the board. It just depends on which day you're looking at. Here's that little relief coming through Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Some rain chances, showers possible there on Sunday, and we do attempt to dry out by the beginning of next week.
There's another threat to the worker shortage facing the nation. The U.S. is at risk of losing 100,000 employment-based green cards due to a pandemic backlog. It's impacting more than 1 million immigrants who have already been waiting months or even years for a green card.
We don't want these people to leave our country and go to other countries and contribute to their economies.
Immigration policy experts that we spoke with say in most cases, these are people who have decades of experience in their field and would be hard to replace if they left, and it's impacting tech employees from India the most.
I think what's important for people to understand is these are visa numbers that are authorized by Congress, and the only reason that they're not being issued is because of administrative processing delays.
Last October, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services started with 120,000 more green cards than usual, which was an effort to clear up the pandemic backlog. But things like staffing issues within the sector are what's putting such a high number at risk of expiring on September 30th. Now, if too many people waiting on a green card leave the U.S., it could be costly for companies that already have a high number of job openings.
Because if they're not filled, they aren't producing to their highest capacity. And that's harming everyone. That's harming consumers who are going to buy the products that these businesses are producing.
I mean, I think there are a number of things that the government can do to make their processing much more efficient. They should take away administrative barriers that sort of delay processing unnecessarily. They need to think creatively and come into this world of the pandemic of doing things remotely and virtually.
Immigration Services has not said yet if it plans to change its processing protocol to try and beat that September 30th deadline. Now, this is a summer camp whose lessons are different than many, focusing on race.
I don't really think there's a reason to be racist because it's just a skin color.
Tomorrow, what the parents of these students say is the biggest benefit of a summer school devoted to discussing and learning about race in our country.
Here are some of the stories that we're working on for Krhd News at 6. A Brazos Valley jail is starting to feel the effects of the surging COVID cases. We'll tell you how that's affecting jail employees at risk for COVID-19. Plus, the Biden administration putting student loan payments on pause again until 2022. But is there any chance student loan debt forgiveness will happen in the near future? These stories and more coming up on Krhd News at 6. World News Tonight is just ahead, and we're back in 30 minutes for our 6 o'clock newscast. Until then, have a